Alright, hello, this is Yazuki Wolf, and welcome to another game devlog. Today we're going to be continuing on our development of the arena. And let me just pull up my magnifying glass here so you can see. This is the arena. We're here with Wizzy the Old. He is our main player character at the moment. And we'll see that he has a place for his strength, dexterity, health, sort of pokiness. That's his equipment. But at any rate, we got the basics of this sort of arena game where you're stuck in an arena with monsters and you have to kill them all. And we have the standard melee attack, but we haven't implemented a ranged attack, and that's something that we're going to need to do. You'll see here in the upper right-hand corner, we basically have all the functionality we want. We have a melee attack, a ranged attack, there's a taunt, which we already put in there. We have items you can use, we're going to have to add that still. Passing turn, which we already have in there. Beg for mercy. That's something we haven't quite figured exactly what we're gonna do with that yet. But so this is sort of our plan. We have the melee attack. Next thing on the list is our ranged attack. So how are we going to implement that? Well, first let me get out of here real quick. Okay, so here we are in Clip Studio, my drawing software. So let's use this as sort of a scrap paper to figure out how we're going to approach this. Currently, we have the character, and as I just mentioned, he's able to perform actions in one of 8 directions. The default action is his movement, so without any other input, he just moves. But with an if you put him into the attack mode, he'll do a melee attack. And the way that melee attacks work, and that's going to be the key to how we're going to establish our ranged attacks, is when you put him into the melee attack mode. Now let's give him like an angry face because he's getting ready to attack. Yarr! And he has to have a sword too, right? So when he's in attack mode, and you press let's say right, what happens is we spawn in a hitbox. There you go. So we spawn in a hitbox, and the hitbox looks for other colliders. So every enemy, and I believe the player himself as well, has a sort of collider here, and let's put C for collider. And if that collider intersects with the hitbox, then the hitbox tells the collider that it has been hit, and it translates the damage to. So now essentially you want to do the same thing, but with range. So there's a couple ways we can approach this. So now our enemy is 3 blocks away, 3 tiles away from us. We can, instead of instantiating, and if in case you're not familiar with the terminology, instantiate just means to like spawn or to bring into being. So instead of spawning a hitbox here, we could say spawn 1, 2, 3 hitboxes, or however many hitboxes cover the distance of what our long range attack is going to be. And then they will do the same thing that the melee attack does, where it looks for a collider and then translates to the collider any damage that was contained in that attack. Another thing we could do is, instead of making the hitbox a little circle like this, we could make it a really long circle, a really long hitbox. We could make it a long box instead of a circle even, and then it will just look for anyone that's within that box. Or, and this is the thing that I think we're gonna do, probably the easiest thing, is we'll actually just we'll do the same thing we're doing with the melee attack. We'll spawn a hitbox right there where the melee attack starts, but if it's a ranged attack, we'll have that hitbox move across the screen for however many spaces that the range of that attack is. And if it hits a collider, then it will tell the collider, hey, you got hit. So I think that's probably the simplest approach we can take to this. The question then is, how do we get it to move? So the way that let's look at what the actual hitbox is, I suppose. All right, so here we are in Unity, and I have this prefab, which is a Hitbox Prefab. I have it saved in my resources folder so that I could call it at any time, and from any script rather. And you can see here it actually is a red square. It doesn't have to be, though. I just made it a red square. I added this sprite to it so that I could see it in game and for debugging purposes, but there's no reason for it to actually have a sprite at all. You can have it completely, you could take the sprite off completely and it still functions perfectly, because it's not reliant on the sprite, it's reliant on this thing here, which is the circle collider. Why can I not see it? Do I have to click on here? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I have to click over here. Yeah, so there you go. So you see there's the Unity box here, which is just saying that this is the object, and the green circle around it is the actual collider, and I turned that on and off. The reason why turning that on and off is important, and there may be better ways to do this, but the way that I decided to do it is I want the damage that is being sent to the thing that's being hit to not be assigned by this prefab, but rather to be assigned by whatever agent is attacking. So if the player is attacking, or if the enemies are attacking, it doesn't matter. They both will summon this. They'll both spawn in the same hitbox, and after they spawn it, they will then tell it what their damage is. So if the player has a damage does a damage of like 5, he'll spawn the hitbox. He'll tell the hitbox, my damage is 5, and then after telling him that the damage is 5, then he turns on then he turns on the collider, and the hitbox with the collider on then looks for collisions, and if it finds a collision with something that can be damaged, it then tells that thing that's been damaged that it has received 5 damage. This just allows me to kind of control when the damage is sent over, and to make sure that the proper number is updated first before it actually sends it over. And there may be better ways to do that. That's just the way I kind of set it up in here. But that's important because we're going to use that for the ranged attack as well. So what we're going to do with the ranged attack is we're going to just make one more hitbox. Let's just duplicate this. Control D in Unity will duplicate. And I'm just going to call this the ranged hitbox. I suppose I could also call it like moving hitbox or something like that. And I'm not going to do all this right now. I'm just going to I just kind of want to show you what's going to go into it. So here we have our ranged hitbox. Oops, I didn't really want to take that sprite renderer off. I still want to see that. Okay. So here we go. And this is the exact same thing as the first one, but we're going to add another thing here. And what we're going to add is we're going to add a new script. And let's call this something like, I guess we could just call it ranged attack script or ranged hitbox script. See, you want your scripts to be reusable, so I'm trying to think of something very I'm trying to think of like the simplest, the most reusable thing we could think of, like just like a move, like the simplest thing we could do is we could just call it a movement script. But I think for our purposes, I don't know if we're going to use this for anything else besides the ranged attack. So I'm just going to call it the ranged hitbox script. So we have our ranged hitbox script, and go ahead. Actually, you know what? And actually, you know what? You know, I tried to not get too much into the specifics of Unity for this, or C# and programming, but I think what I'm actually going to do, and I'll probably do this after I finish this explanation, is I'm going to take this original hitbox script off, and I'm going to make the ranged hitbox script derivative of, I'm going to make the ranged hitbox script as like another version of the hitbox script. So it's going to be a derivative. It's going to derive all its basic, it's going to derive all the same script that's from the original hitbox script. But we're also going to give it a little bit more functionality. And I realize I'm getting a little complicated here, so we're going to go back to my scrapbook to kind of break down what all this is going to be, what all this is going to mean. So as a quick review, the way that this is working is for melee, the attacker is summoning or spawning this this hitbox, and then he's telling the hitbox whatever his damage is. So he says, my damage is 3. The hitbox then, on its own, is going to look for any collisions. And this particular hitbox has no collisions, but if, say, for example, we had this character over here, then it will say, oh, I'm colliding, I'm overlapping this collider of this player. So it's going to tell this player or enemy, it works either way, that you are receiving 3 damage. I'm carrying 3 damage with me, and now you're going to receive it. Here's your package. Merry Christmas. And so we still want to keep that functionality, and that all that functionality is contained in our hitbox script, which is already attached to the hitbox. But now what we want to do for the ranged hitbox is we want to take all the same functionality of the hitbox script. Actually, let me write over here. And then the ranged hitbox script is going to have an added functionality, and that functionality is 2 things. First off, it's going to have a distance value, or we could even call it like range. But I'm going to say distance right now because I think it makes more sense in terms of movement. So it's going to have a distance, and then it's also going to have a function, which is going to be something like move. And it's going to move the distance, whatever the distance is. So the 2 things that are going to happen is in the same way that the regular melee attack is being given a damage value by the attacker, the ranged attacker is going to pass both a damaged value, and it's also going to pass a range or a distance. So we'll say that the range of my attack is 3. And yeah, let's make it easier. Let's say the damage is 2 just to make things a little bit more clear. So it has a damage of 2, and it has a range of 3. And now with that information, the ranged hitbox is going to travel 3 spaces. And in our example, when it goes to the second space, it's going to collide with this player, this actor, whether it's a player or enemy, either way, and then it's going to tell that actor that it's receiving 2 damage. Now there is another scenario where you might have 2 enemies, or 2 targets, I guess we could call them. And in that case, maybe we want it to relay 2 damage to both of them. That'd be like a piercing ranged attack. But our current functionality, and I think what we want right now is we want it to actually stop at the first target. And we don't really have to do anything for that. I believe the way that our hitbox is set up right now is it's already set up to disappear after it finds its first target. I'll have to double check that to be sure later, but I mean, either way, it's a quick fix. If we want it to only hit 1 target, we just make the hitbox disappear or destroy itself after the first target's hit, and if not, then we just let it keep flying until it reaches the final distance, and then it will destroy itself at the end of its distance of movement. Alright, so that's the plan in a nutshell. Now I'm going to actually get in there and try to implement this into the game, and I'll catch up with you in the next video, and hopefully I'll be able to show you it working in-game, or if there's any bugs along the way, I'll talk to you about how I did or did not overcome them. Right, so till next time, live boldly and be creative. Yoroshiku.